have three, not one, not two, but three amazing speakers who are joining us today. We have the three living directors of the Wehr Nature Center here with us today. Unfortunately, we don't have Harold Rock with us anymore. He was the original director, but we have the three other directors that have been at Wehr, and they're going to share with us their insights on what volunteers have done for Wehr over the past 50 years and in what they're going to do into the future. So I learned something this afternoon, and I hope I'm not going to steal her thunder. I did not know this, because I don't really have any records that tell me this. Mariette Nowak, Wehr's second director, who was at Wehr from, I have it here in my notes, 1980 to 1988, was the first volunteer at Wehr, before there was even a building. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mariette.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, and I'm one of you, as you know. I was, well, I should show you that first slide, and but you know, here I was. I'm going to just talk about the early years, the last century when I was here. There is Harold Rock, and one of his great contributions to Wehr was the starting of the one of his great contributions to Wehr was the start of volunteering. Originally, that was frowned upon in the county. The labor unions weren't too happy about volunteering, but there was no staff here originally anyway at Wehr Nature Center. So Harold started it, and look what it burgeoned into, and how much more we've accomplished through all of you over these 50 years. It's just wonderful. And anyway, the way I started is Harold Rock had a little class for volunteer naturalists at the Boerner Botanical Gardens right here, and we led bird hikes and so forth from here. But as soon as the Nature Center was built, a couple of years later, we transferred over to the Wehr Nature Center, and that is where we had, started programming and leading bird hikes there. And just to let you know about some of the things, of course, here's our first volunteer dinner. Lots of volunteers already then. And this was a year before the Nature Center was built. They started on Oak Savanna. The prairie had originally been started in the 60s, and one of the people was Art Odie, who was mentioned earlier. And through the years, of course, a lot of the things, as it says, land shaping here, and there were lots of groups that started then, Wheel and Chip, and here's a picture of the Wheel and Chip group. They a great group of mostly guys at that time, and they would take their wheelbarrows and chip the trails and make sure they weren't, they were walkable and not too muddy. They did a great job, and they had a nice group together. And then some of the other, there was the seed collectors at that time. Maybe I should just, I guess you'll just, you'll hear me anyway because of the mic. So I could stand this way. The seed collectors, for a long time we collected seed at some prairie remnants and even at the Wehr Nature Center, and then we sold them for a profit. And that was one of the efforts to increase native landscaping throughout our area. And of course, they talk about prairie restoration here. We have birds, prescribed birds regularly in the prairie and Oak Savanna. The Camera Club was very active, the Astronomical Society, Phenology. They went out every week to list the flowers and other plants that were blossom. Earth Care, beehives, and more. Right here, this is a group I was actively involved in for quite a long time, the transplant volunteers. And what they would do at that time, there were lots of, well, not a lot, but there were some undeveloped areas in Milwaukee County, and when they were developing, we tried to make sure that if it had good flora, native plants, we would go out and collect them. We'd get permission, of course, but as it says, it would last until about 1980. That was about the time I became director, because by that time there weren't many remnants that were being developed in Milwaukee County or nearby anyway, so there was no place to go. But we'd take those plants and transplant them into the Nature Center and added some great flora here, right at the Wehr Nature Center. And this is the Friends of Wehr, which was established, as it says, in about here's the 1987 board. Well, it was started in 1981. But I just wanted to say that the Friends of Wehr and all the volunteers at Wehr were not only just friends of Wehr, they were friends of mine and the staff. They're just wonderful. And I'm sure you are all friends of everyone too. And the picture here shows some of my favorites, actually. Jerry Delighton always had such a cheery voice. You'd call him on the phone and you'd feel better just having him say hello in his cheery way. Carol Bach here was the first president of the Friends of Wehr, very dedicated. And then Hendra took a lot of school groups, and she was a good friend. Ruth Wright was a good friend of mine. Jim Rick was a good friend too, and he was the top volunteer, putting in the most hours for quite a few years. He was doing all kinds of different things and was one of our great volunteers at that time. And adult field trips. We had a lot of great trips with our volunteers. We'd go to prairies, as you can see here, and urban prairie here. This was close by the Kettle Moraine. This prairie was sad, you in there. But we went to Eagle Days. Some of you can go there on your own. But and then we had memorial trips for a few days every Memorial weekend each year for a while. And the nice thing about those trips, I always tried to get leaders from the area so that we had, the expertise of people in those areas leading us, which was a lot better than just me, because I wouldn't have known all of the North Woods or other things. So it was really great. We had a lot of fun. And the fundraising. I hope you've all seen my shirt. This is part of our fundraising efforts. I love this sweatshirt. It says Wehr Nature Center on here, or Friends of Wehr. And it says Wehr Nature Center, but it has lots of flora on it and so forth. But it was one of our fundraising things, and I always loved it. Sorry about that. I always loved this sweatshirt. So I thought, it was very appropriate with new volunteers here. And other fundraising, as you can see here. And these were not only just fundraising, but educational and fun. The Wildlife Art Fair, Maker Shipper Weekend. Bob Wilson was also a good friend, and always he made his own wine and always would share it with us. I don't think he did it on Maker Shipper Weekend, but we'll always remember him for his good wine. And Carol Bach here again is volunteering for Cider Sunday. She was always very active in that. And here is Mary Beese. And I think Mary Beese should stand up because she is Mary Beese. Stand up. I understand. I knew her from way back then when I was here too. And she is the longest serving volunteer of all at this time, right, Mary? Did she ever stand up? I couldn't see her for me. But anyway, so we're happy to have her and all of you people too. I'm sure many of you have been here for a while. Next slide. And this was quite a surprise. Mary Gardner, we never knew who she was. She evidently just liked walking the Nature Center, and she gave $100,000 to us in her will. And with that, we were finally able to expand. I imagine you all know how much the Gardner Room is used now for all kinds of events. And even that, I bet it's getting smaller with the way we're expanding. Yeah, I see Carly is shaking her head. But at that time, it was just so great. We could expand our programs and accommodate people. It was so crowded, even for those volunteer dinners that we talked about earlier. And here's the Gardner Room, and we had a wonderful group of volunteers on that building committee, and it was just a great effort, and was one of our expansions that really helped so much. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Deb McRae, who's going to continue with all the rest of the wonderful...
Thank you, Mariette. I think a lot of us are looking at okay, I'll go into this. All right. Anyway, first of all, I have the next 30 years, so please bear with me because they gave me 10 minutes, and I'll do my best. I'm sorry for everybody we missed and all the things we missed. It was all such a wonderful, wonderful time, and it makes great memories. This one I wanted to start with because Nature in the Parks has been part of Wehr Nature Center. It started in 1982, 1983, somewhere in there. And it was a way to expand Wehr's very limited staff to help meet the expanding need of interest in getting outside and environmental education and nature. And so it went to all the other county parks. It also helped Wehr with many of the things that it needed to do. And it stayed a part of Wehr Nature Center until just a few years ago. And so I think that Extension and Nature in the Parks partnership is a big one. And volunteers also made that happen. Because even though we would take all this stuff to different parks, when you had to work with a group of school children, whether there were 40 or 60 of them, it took volunteers as well. And so a whole group of volunteers got to enjoy the much expanded view of the Milwaukee County Park System. The other thing that Nature in the Parks did that I think a lot of people don't realize is with the help of staff and volunteers, we helped start the Urban Ecology Center. Back then it was in Riverside Park, and it was called, I don't know, it had like 4 or 5 different names, but the volunteers helped do all the programs there. So that's another big accomplishment that Wehr had a big hand in, as well as all the volunteers. Okay, expanding capacity. As Mariette said, the Gardner Room expanded capacity. That's right, we had a lot more space, but we didn't have any more staff. So that meant volunteers stepped up, and what a wonder they were. Parks Department also decided that we needed to raise more money, and they put a parking fee in and a few other things like that. So the staff and volunteers got together and decided, we must do some more programming. Well, in the end, it turned out to be wonderful because a lot of really great things happened. One of the first ones was Prairie Days that started as a summer weekend, and it took over 1,200 volunteer hours just to make this event work. And I think everyone should notice this. Can you just, I don't even know my hand gets up there. Anyway, this picture on the left-hand side, guess who that is? That's Brooke. That's Brooke as a teen volunteer. So pretty good, huh? And she's leading the 5th Brigade Band, which is on a parade, which is a group that came and volunteered their time and effort to help make Prairie Days the event that it was. Down here you see Jim Rick and Jerry Delighted, people that Mariette mentioned. They would go, well, a whole bunch of people, but we'd have to go get this covered wagon from where it was. They'd haul it over, and then we'd have to put the top on it. And it took a lot of work to get it, but it was a great part of Prairie Days. Other things that happened with Prairie Days, we had people who had to camp out overnight because we had so many props, we didn't want them to get damaged. And that's when we learned that there are almost as many people walking the Nature Center in the evening as there are during the daytime, because a lot of people have a job that has them, where they can't. And so the evening time is when they can walk. I want to mention Jo Swanson up here. She was the very first volunteer coordinator. We had to have a volunteer coordinator. When you start thinking of how many more events that were happening and how many things that were going on, we needed somebody to help keep track of all of our volunteers. And so she was there in the beginning, and she did so much work. And I wish she was here today so we could thank her, but she couldn't come. So anyway, Jo started so many different programs, one of which was the teen program. And then she also did training and a whole lot of other things. One of the other pieces that happened in the early 1990s was the Master Naturalist program was started here at Wehr. This particular program was to train our teaching naturalists, originally started, to train teaching naturalists to give them more knowledge. One of the things that happened in the 90s was a lot of change in the school system. And schools couldn't go on field trips unless the field trip matched the goals and standards. And so that meant a lot of effort had to go into kind of meeting where the schools where they were at. It wasn't just coming for a great natural history lesson anymore. And I think we were all sad when tracking kind of lost a lot of ground. It used to be one of our biggest winter programs, and everyone loved it except for the plaster. And it just didn't fit in anybody's curriculum, so we had to make changes. Volunteers were very important in helping us make all these changes and figuring out where we needed to go, but also we all had to learn how to teach a little differently. because I think with natural history, we really enjoyed sharing our knowledge and helping people understand what was out there. Well, they wanted us to start doing things in a different way, asking questions, getting discovery learning. So we all went through this process of learning how to do new programming, and the Master Naturalist program here at Wehr was what helped us do that. And that program eventually, years later, turned into a nationwide program and a state Wisconsin program, which is a little different focus, but it's still a really wonderful program. And last but not least is we got a star lab. Cool, right, Karen and Howard? So astronomy took on a big focus here, and that meant training volunteers in astronomy. And we also got some new volunteers that were interested in astronomy. Okay, so the 2000s, that was huge expansion for us. There were so many things that needed to happen. We still needed to generate revenue. We still didn't have any more staff, and volunteers became a vital part of making all that happen. And some of these programs were started like the Adventure Summer Day Camps. They're still going on today. Earth Roots. And the Master Naturalist was one of the outreach programs, and this one happens to be one at State Fair. And this was a program for a couple years where we would go to State Fair and take Wehr Nature Center's naturalists and volunteers. It was all volunteer run, and we would go and do programs for kids at State Fair. Other things that happened, too many to put on slides. We had Little Wonders, Nature Knots, Earth Roots, Adventure Summer, I did the day camps, Irish Fest, Summer Fest, Indian Summer, Astronomy Day Fair, because we had the Star Lab, Maple Sugaring, Reptile Day, Bug Day, Earth Day, Cider Sunday, Halloween Haunts, hikes in other parks. Volunteers used to lead hikes in the other parks. And on Saturdays or on Sundays and the weekends, we would take and meet groups of people in some of the other county parks and take them for a hike. And there are regular groups. And I don't remember the first name for Wehr Birders, but now it's called Wehr Birders. They meet on Sundays. But there were groups that would meet in the spring and other times of year and go hiking. And then if it was Monday, we knew it was phenology. If it was Tuesday, it was Wheel and Chip. If it was Wednesday, it was land management by its various names. And so it went on, and it is no wonder that most of our top volunteers put in between 700 and 600 hours a year volunteering. Okay, volunteer recognition. That's what this is all about today. And I wanted to give you a little bit. Mariette showed you the first volunteer recognition dinner, and it's been going on since then. And I wanted to share with you some other tidbits about the volunteer recognition. First of all, the dinners or brunches, it went into brunch eventually, have happened, and they were all potlucks. Now, we all loved those potlucks because the food was incredible. And we had good times and good friends, sometimes a little alcohol. She mentioned Wilson used to bring the beverages he brewed. And it was such amazing food that one of the other volunteer projects was a Wehr cookbook. There's still a few of those floating around. Every now and then I find mine. So volunteers have been thanked with things for many years, and this one is going to be really hard to beat, Mary. That chunk of walnut is really special. But we got patches and mugs and window clings and a whole variety of other goodies to help share the appreciation that we have for all that volunteers do. Top volunteers are listed on a plaque, and I don't know, it was around somewhere. I saw it, I was going to hold it up, but I don't know where it went. But we've now, what do we have to 3 plaques? 4 plaques? 3 plaques. And the top volunteers would get their names listed on there, but nobody knew who it was going to be until actually the event, and we had our dinner or brunch, and it was always a wonderful surprise. In 1999, Joe started through a memorial to Eleanor Burkholz, who was a longtime volunteer. Her memorial provided some money, and we started with recognition pins. First ones, because it was too hard to go back and try to figure out what year was what, she started with 10-year pins. And I think we're up to 40 years now, 45, and I think that goes to Mary Geese, right? Congratulations, Mary. And so it was really wonderful that we had these pins and to continue to look at longevity as well as number of hours. Many of you may recognize Ziggy. He was one of our top volunteers for years. He would do 800 hours, 700 hours, 600 hours with regularity. He did everything, but I think his favorite thing was teaching. And when Ziggy passed away, one of the things his memorial did was to create the Ziggy Packs. And we still have those today where people can come and check out a Ziggy Pack and families can go explore on their own at the Nature Center. This last slide, I wanted to pick up some more current volunteers. And this is one of the slides I found of top volunteers, and I don't remember what year, but it does give a good look at some of the different groups. So we've got Ted here, who did Wheel and Chip and his Friends of Wehr. We've got Barb, who is a librarian and a historian. I decided it's more than just being a librarian, she's really a historian. We've had groups, ladies through the years who've done that. Then we have teaching volunteers. Oh, there's Mary. So teaching volunteers. And we have another group of volunteers who used to do the front desk. They were very important when we lost our front desk staff, when we didn't have people to be at the front desk full time. We have some park workers, but it wasn't all the time. So we had this group of people who would call, who would file things, who do projects, and they were so important. They would make sales in the gift store, they could take sales in for parking, so they did many, many things. They were the first people that greeted people that came to visit the center. And then Paul Briggs is back here, Friends of Wehr, Bob Wilson. I can't remember, there's not much there. Anybody recognize that corner of a head?
Never farted.
Oh, is that Debbie?
I can only recognize her glasses.
Then there was animal care volunteers on there. Right. Anyway, so this slide was kind of funny. It shows a lot of the current volunteer groups. Good recognizing. The corporate groups. Now, corporate volunteers and partnerships have been at Wehr from the very beginning, but in the 2000s, they really started to ramp up. There was a big push for volunteerism. It came through a Points of Light Foundation. It was a federal kind of program that was started, and corporations wanted to start helping more. It was a big help to us, with one exception. How do you handle 100 people that want to come in and help, but really don't have any skills that you can use? Well, luckily the Parks Department had a lot of garbage that needed to be cleaned up. Luckily Wehr didn't, because everybody around Wehr keeps things pretty tidy, just because we can keep it that way. So they took the big groups, and we were able, with Joe's help, to go through and pick out smaller groups and offer smaller group experiences so that they could be more targeted to what we needed. They were still unskilled for our standards, but it worked. So some of them worked in garden. This is in the play-space garden area. They would, for years, Bear would come in and do a spring cleanup in the early childhood play space and plant our little garden out there. They've painted, they've done land management under the watchful eye of our experienced volunteers. Walkabout youth volunteers, that was one of the big fundraisers. And there's one that's an interesting one because it ties to the boardwalk and our accessibility, is that in 2003, Delphi Automotive was laying people off, but they were paying them. But in order to get paid, they had to go volunteer in the community, which is a pretty cool idea. And so we got 3 volunteers to help design and build our first pilot boardwalk. And so these 2 guys, Jerry and Wally, not only did they help build that first pilot section, but they did some other volunteering as well. I believe Jerry was an astronomer, right?
Yeah. Big guy.
Yeah. So he helped with astronomy too. Well, they laid the foundation, and today, well, this isn't quite today, but some of the groups from today are here, guys are here. Anyway, we're still building boardwalk. They took the new pilot, fixed all the problems with it, or at least most of them, right? I think you guys got them mostly solved. And so now they're continuing to build boardwalk, and it's a wonderful amenity to the center to provide a place for people who need better access, whether it's wheelchairs or walkers, and it also lets our easy-goes go, which helps with maintenance. New volunteer opportunities. Like I said, the 2000s was so busy. We had so many things going on. Again, budget cuts were causing problems. Joe had to get really creative, and she found lots of ways for volunteers to help. I wanted to highlight this particular program, and we have his permission to be on this slide. There was a series of court-ordered community service that people who had done minor things had to do. And so the local judges contacted us for, could we take some people? So Joe found a special program. They could work with land management, and they could come and do this, and they put in hours and hours of land management work that would have not gotten done because there just wasn't staff to do it. Dottie's Crafters, I wanted to bring them in. They're a group that was a craft group before, but one of our staff who worked at the front desk was a wonderful crafter, and she's here somewhere, I think, in the back. Yay, Dottie. Anyway, so she got this group of ladies together, and it wasn't all ladies. There were some guys in there, too. And they just made all kinds of stuff, whether it was props for something, education program things, we made things for the kids to do. Here they're actually doing if you could see it, they're doing the butterflies and caterpillars. Those of you remember when we had those at Bug Day and a whole bunch of other places, it was a ring that we made. One of the other things they did was to help build the teacher boxes. We got some large grants from PNC and some other places to train teachers in how to be better science teachers at the elementary level. And so one of the things we did, knowing that teachers never have time to make things and props that they need, is we would send them back with a whole box of props. Well, guess who made the props? And Dottie, I don't know how many cubes we made for all those dice games. The other groups here represent one of my favorite things is that we worked with some young people. These were mostly high school students, a few college students, and they had a whole bunch of different names depending on what they ended up being. But it was the Student Conservation Leadership Corps, the Milwaukee County Leadership Corps, a bunch of other different names. But what they did is, and some of you saw the program that August Ball did a few weeks ago, maybe at the center. She was the one who was partially involved with this. And so we had kids doing land management and other things throughout the center during the summer. They would be paid a small amount of money, they got a lot of training, and they learned how to hold a job. So it covered many different aspects. And one of my favorites was they did all this riprap, which has actually helped with some of the erosion areas, because it was just more heavy labor than most of us could do. And so it was wonderful to have all that young labor to help do all that riprap. One of the other things that I think they found enjoyable, that I don't think they thought they were going to find it enjoyable, but they really liked it, was helping with Prairie Days Adventures and with Going Buggy, which were two events that started to be during the week in the summertime to take care of school groups that came in the summer or summer camp groups that came in the summer. And so they helped a lot because it took a lot of volunteers to run those, and they helped a lot to do that. Okay, so now we're getting into the 2010s, and we thought the 2000s were crazy. The 2010s were even worse in terms of needing to do things. So one of the big things that happened is Joe retired, but then we got married. Thank goodness we got married. Because she has done so much to help keep our volunteers going. And one of the big things, yes, applause. She got us all keeping good records, but that meant computers. And so she and Emily, along with some volunteers and some staff, started looking into how we could do this. And the research programs got us set up. The Friends of Wehr, we are very grateful, funded it, and they got us using Volgistics. Now, everybody in here now is very comfortable with Volgistics. When it first started, Mary had to do training classes. She had to drag us kicking and screaming into the computer age. And she even, for some people who didn't have computers, I think there were a couple years you still entered hours for people because they didn't even have their own computers. Now it's all on computer, we can generate the numbers, and it's wonderful, but it took a lot to get there. And Carly will talk a little bit more about that later. Anyway, that piece led us to this one right here, which is being a certified service enterprise provider. That was a unique thing. Extension took the staff here at Wehr through this process, and we became a certified service enterprise. And I have to read exactly their mission because I always mess it up here. Its certification shows that our program is strategically and effectively leveraging volunteer hours to achieve our mission. And Wehr Nature Center was the very first nature center to be certified in the whole country. So, way to go, volunteers, and Mary and her crew for getting that done. So during the 2010s, we had to, of course, bring in more revenue, because we always had to bring in more revenue. That was one of those things, more money, more money, more money. And so the staff and volunteers got together, and so we knew that if we could bring more people in, we could make more money, but it had to be special programs. So I broke it into quarters just to make it a little more understandable. So in the winter, we did Winterfest, Birdfest, and Maple Sugar Weekend. In the spring, or the second quarter, we would do Earth Day, the plant sale with the Mother's Day picnic, and Reptile Day. Then in the summertime, we had Prairie Days Are Going Buggy, Astronomy Day Fair, and Bug Day. And then in the fourth quarter, because we didn't have enough to do, we had Cider Sunday, Halloween, the Volunteer Recognition Dinner, and the Doll Bear Lunch or Homemade Holidays. So every month of the year, volunteers were doing special events, large and small, because the staff, there weren't enough staff to do all this. So without volunteers, we wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have met our revenue generation. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As I was going through, and that's when our volunteer hours were like 13,000, 15,000 hours of volunteer time. Pretty incredible. And we didn't have as many volunteers back then. I wanted to share with you a couple of them I thought were fun when I was looking through some information. We had a group called SMAC. This was the social media activity crew. Because, we didn't know anything about we knew very little about social media. So we needed to do more social media to get the word out there. And so this group of young people and some of the staff got together and started bringing us up into Facebook and Instagram, and help me, Emily, what are the rest of them? Because I still don't know most of them. Okay. There was an X, I just know that. Okay, so anyway, it was fun. We also had the Paw Patrol. So we had so many people walking their dogs. It was getting to be a real problem. But it took people being trained in how to be nice about telling people they couldn't do something. Because nobody likes to be told you can't do it. And so we had a whole group trained to be the Paw Patrol. It's now morphed into Trail Patrol because they have lots more to do than just dogs. And then the other things I thought of when I ran into, remember we had Pokemon Go, we had geocaching, we had letterboxing, all these things that were taking people off trail. And it was a really big issue, so we needed to have people out there helping people stay on the trail so they didn't destroy our nature that everybody loved and wanted to be out here for. And Jim Rick was the first person to receive, in 2018, the 35-year service pin. This is a slide that I insisted on because in the 2010s, volunteers literally saved the Nature Center, truly in many ways. First I want to highlight this gentleman right here. You can't really recognize him, but that's Paul Brings. In 2014, the center was slated to be basically moved under a new group called Natural Resources. We would no longer have a director. We would just have an in charge. Extension would be gone. And it was basically going to become a very small facility. So many people said no. Paul collected signatures at Halloween haunts that year. We had people send in letters from all over the country saying, please, no, we need this place. Volunteers went to board meetings, they went to other meetings, they wrote letters, they called, they were all over the place, letting everybody know how important it was to keep Wehr Nature Center. And it worked. So kudos to you. Also, if you notice in this picture up here, many of you may remember that, our building had been around for a while and it needed painting and the county could never get it painted, and so it began to fall apart. And so the Friends said, we'll provide the windows if the county will get the siding done. So the Friends worked very hard to raise money to put in the windows, and that's where we started some of our fundraising meals, and the Slicer Dicer Baker volunteer group got started. We had chili cook-off, we had Feast Among the Flowers, Summer Solstice, Flavors of Fall, and all these meals helped raise money, and you'll find windows or benches that have provided by Summer Solstice or provided by Flavors of Fall. It's one way that we manage to keep money and get the money raised. This window is special though, however, because the Wheel and Chippers chipped in. Not only do they do a lot of work and work really hard, but they chipped in the money to buy a window. So that was wonderful. Barb Mellon is one of the ones who was big on the food things. I wanted to, this group right here is representing Ladies' Night Out, but also the Wehr Naturally Committee. Because one of the other things that happened during this time is we had to do a strategic planning with volunteers, parks, Friends of Wehr, and staff, and they decided we needed more adult groups. So the Wehr Naturally Committee, which is all volunteers, got started and began to find ways to bring in adult programs into the Nature Center. And so they're still going strong, and Ladies Night Out currently is one of the top fundraisers, I believe, for Friends of Wehr. And you've heard us talk about the Wheel and Chip crew. Well, there is a subset of that crew called the Deconstruction Crew. Because as we were toward the end of in about 1919, our furnace went out, so we had to get the furnace replaced in the wintertime, and then we started construction on some of the renovation in the building that we did and adding the new staff area. So this group I think they had a lot of fun. They liked tearing things down, and so they helped tear down some of the stuff and take things out, whether it was carpeting, whatever, to help decrease some of the cost of getting the new places that were fixed and renovated during the last edition. So thank you to the Deconstruction Crew. During that time, we had so many other things going on. The teaching volunteers were working overtime. We had Hike for Health, which was all volunteer-led, yoga. The Friends took over the plant sale, where birders started. We had DIY and nature hangouts. So we had lots going on, volunteers continuing to do more and more and more. This will be the last slide that I'm doing because it was kind of the end of what I have to do. COVID. COVID was interesting on many fronts. I think you'd think that volunteering went down during COVID because people just weren't coming out. Well, our numbers maybe did go down a little, but our volunteers kept volunteering. They did so many different things. One of the things that I found was great fun, we still did Halloween haunts because it was outside. But you can't have Halloween haunts without carved pumpkins, right? So everybody carved pumpkins at home, and they brought them in trucks, however they needed to. So we still got to have Halloween haunts because we had pumpkins on the trails. We had, and the crew, the special crew from the electricians, would came and put out all the special effects for us. We didn't get to do Cider Sunday like we normally do, but we came up with the Wehr Adventure Challenge. And this was a really fun, sort of do it on your own, family-oriented scavenger hunt. It was a way to still keep everybody involved and still stay respectful of what COVID was doing. And so you had many choices of things to do, and I have fond memories of taking my grandkids to the apple orchard to pick the apples, and then we went and baked the pie, and then we put the picture of them eating the pie on the Friends website, because that was all part of what you did to help make Cider Sunday into the Wehr Adventure Challenge. And again, without the volunteers putting all the pieces together, it wouldn't have happened. We started Spark just at the beginning of COVID, so we had to take it to their houses. So volunteers helped us make all the things, the kits and all the stuff that went to their houses. We even baked, 12 to 15 apple pies one time, just so they could have apple pie.
And it was really good.
So the volunteers did so much, and I think the last thing during COVID we all need to remember is we all took care of each other. People called, checked on each other. And so now Carly's going to take us into the next phase of where we go from now, plus a few other little highlights, because we couldn't possibly catch everything and everybody.
Wow. Can I just say that I've been with the Nature Center for 3 years now. I started in October, and so my portion is so small in comparison to these two. But I am so grateful for the opportunity to spend some time with these two ladies to put this presentation together. What a gift to be able to dedicate to preserving this past, this rich and wonderful past. So thank you for that. So I started in October of 2021, the same week of Halloween haunts. We had been through the pandemic for a little over almost 2 years at that point, and so we kind of knew what to do, how to stay safe, how to transition and things like that. But we were still very much in a pandemic, and so we had to be creative and go with the flow. Mary's saying, "Blessed are the flexible." couldn't have been even more valuable than at that time when I remember one week we need to close, the next week we're open, the next week we have 3 staff who are sick, and on a small team that's just really challenging. And so the volunteers, though, show up every single time to fill in the holes when asked. So I'm highlighting on this slide the importance of intergenerational volunteerism, because at this time, we've had the opportunity for parents to bring their kids, for grandparents to bring their grandbabies, and all of these different wonderful stories that are weaving into the fabric of Wehr's volunteers. In this picture, if I can get my pointer right here, there's actually 3 different sets of family members. So Deb and her granddaughter, Cara, the Imp family, Maria and her daughter, Dottie, and her granddaughter, Emily. So very beautiful. And man, this decomposer rap, which I have done, is just epic. So, but never performed better than the family. This is a more recent picture, just as early as last month. Rick Brees is a volunteer. His son helped with the drilling station for the first time. So these memories are just in the making. We've got the Rebernick family then and now at a Halloween event and at, I believe that was last year's Maple Sugar Days. These people, and raise your hand if you've brought a family member to a Wehr volunteer before. You smart people have figured out the beauty that can be had when you can spend time together and give back. That's truly amazing. Next slide, thank you. Corporate groups continue into the future. Last year, we had 18 corporate groups that came out to Wehr to help with different functions. These are just some of the long-standing groups. This is a Kohl's throwback. I don't know when it was, but at least 20 years ago, then and now. This is, we've got a couple others here. So Baird, Northwestern Mutual came, I believe, for the first time last year, and then a new relationship with Freighter at the Medical College of Wisconsin. They're helping with these more infrequent seasonal type things. I like how you said that, Deb. They're not skilled necessarily in nature center operations, but they do have skills to give, which is worth mentioning. The other thing I thought was really cool to include is that last year we had a connection through the Milwaukee Parks Foundation. A guy named Charles Green, who's on the board of the Milwaukee Parks Foundation, and he reached out to me and said, I work for Mortensen, and we do this thing called Do Something Good, and we pick an organization that we want to do something good for. And so in September, we worked with our parks planning team to get plans made. They actually donated both time and materials, a full day of work with all of their skilled trades, or at least 8 of them, and they donated all of the lumber and hardware to reinforce one of our pedestrian footbridges that was at risk of falling in. We'd have to close trails, right? We'd have to close the lake loop in order for this trail to stay in place because of the erosion. So, pretty cool. All right, I'm sorry, I'm a data person, but I'm sure you were all wondering, right? I know you were. What does the history of volunteerism look like in numbers? Numbers can give us meaning, right? So okay, this is the only graph, I promise. But we don't have records through and through, like Deb mentioned, computers, right? They helped us. But we do have a fair amount of records from the 90s through to today. So in the 90s, volunteers remained really consistent and really strong at Wehr Nature Center. I will point out that Mary Gaub started in 2014. This year, we actually omitted because that was the year that corporate groups and more one-time volunteers started getting included in the records. And we're just not sure what happened, but it was like off the charts, and we were like, wait, we're to figure this out. So I omitted it for accuracy's sake for the time being. But take a look at this. 2022, coming out of the pandemic. 2023, 2024. Last year, volunteers at Wehr Nature Center provided more than 17,000 hours. Now, it's not a competition, okay? But for comparison, Milwaukee County Parks started an engagement program years ago, and they had 126 different cleanup events throughout the Milwaukee County Parks last year, which is amazing. 17,000 hours were dedicated to all the rest of Milwaukee County Parks, matched by Wehr Nature Center. If not, Wehr Nature Center exceeding. And yeah. And I just have to give Mary can we just give Mary one huge ovation? Record year. Yeah, thank you. She's rolling her eyes at me, but thank you. All right, go ahead, next slide. It was over 600 people, by the way. It's amazing. All right, so volunteers are recognized not only, locally within Milwaukee County, but also statewide. In the last couple years, we've received awards through the DNR's Invader Crusader program. Yay, Jeff! We have been the Pull-a-thon winners of Seawisk's Pull-a-thon. Thanks to all of your help. Over 4,000 pounds of garlic mustard and Dame's Rocket. That's a lot of garbage bags. But and this year, is Bob Housey here? No. Bummer. Well, let me spill the beans on Bob's behalf, because Jeff kindly nominated him for the 2025 Invasive Species Action Award recipient with the DNR's Invasive Species Awards program, and we hope that he'll be honored to accept that in June for all of his efforts to manage the When you see him, please embarrass him. Next, please. All right, some standout sisters I've got on this slide are really just highlighting the fact that volunteers, you all don't just show up every day. You don't just show up to do the work. You're here because of your intellect and your commitment and your ability to strategically think about how to build the capacity of the Nature Center. So volunteers are empowered through and through. And way back, not that long ago, 2004, there was an award given called the Sol Feinstein Environmental Award. And it was given to the center, recognizing the role that dedicated volunteers play in the center. Really honoring the fact that you're not just one-time volunteers. It's that consistent giving of time and talent that really stands out. And volunteers are involved in decision-making everywhere from running the nature store, Holly and Mary, to planning, as Deb mentioned, the We're Naturally Committee, planning Ladies' Night Out, and volunteer ambassadors. So the Paw Patrol transitioned to the Volunteer Ambassador Program. And over 50 volunteers have been trained and rolled into that program, helping extend, some I see in the room, helping extend the mission of visitor services to the community. Next, please. So it's that sense of purpose, that sense of camaraderie that I've observed keeps volunteers coming back. I was recently introduced to a book called The Danish Way of Living. Anybody heard of this? So the Danes are some of the happiest people on earth. Why? They have the highest rates of volunteerism, and I think that might have something to do with it. It's the sense of purpose, the sense of belonging to a community, that really keeps you young. And so when the center declared the vision of being a place for all seasons, a place for everyone, they really gave that commitment to being a place for all ages and for all abilities. So I've just got a few shout outs here to Judy Brooks LeVar, who was able to make it today, to Rich Sturl, you've heard his name a couple times now, to Barb Nichols, who's no longer with us, but a teaching naturalist volunteer who I got to meet and was able to use the all-terrain wheelchair a couple years ago, or just last year. The Royts, some of our original volunteers, and Ed and Connie Vidmar. Thank you. So we pass the baton to the next generation and the current one. And here we are, entering into a new chapter of Wehr Nature Center. I'm highlighting a couple of youth-involved and youthful people who are taking us into that next chapter. So Linda and Caleb Waddell, who Caleb helps manage our bird feeders and also do some animal care. I've got Oliver and Lucius, the Brown boys here, Emily's kids. I've got Chrissy and Rachel on there, Beth and Selva's daughters, who have volunteered over time. I threw Kate Kimmel on here. She helps with the Spark program, and I think it's good to give a shout out to those 30s and 40s out there who are working and volunteering. That's pretty cool. And then I had to throw my kids because, you know, when you're a nature center director, I'm sure they're going to be volunteers. And their first, I think, official volunteer task was to help release this monarch last summer. Mary allowed that, which was very beautiful. Thank you. So it's not just for us to keep this special little treasure hidden and for us to keep this a secret. We have to share this model. It's our task. It's our responsibility. And I'm proud to say that through Mary's help, we are helping share the model of Wehr Nature Center volunteers into 2 different entities within Milwaukee County. One right here at Boerner Botanical Gardens. Tomorrow, the new Botanical Gardens director begins here. We wish her the best. Once you get a chance to meet her, please, you'll love her, I promise. They are looking to grow their volunteer program, and we're here to help. Milwaukee County Parks, I also already mentioned the engagement team. They're looking to help learn about how our operations work. They're looking to use Volgistics and integrate within our program in that way. And I end with 2 words. On behalf of the Nature Center staff team, on behalf of the Friends of Wehr, on behalf of Milwaukee County Parks, and all of Milwaukee County, thank you. Thank you for making Wehr Nature Center a beautiful place to attend, to visit, to learn, and to play. And thank you so much for bringing your heart and creating the beautiful community that we are. I also have to give a quick shout out to Bev Bryant and Barb Wallner, who really have been behind the scenes digitizing all of the photos you saw today. How fun is that to be able to access and see that rich legacy right in front of us? And with that, we wouldn't exist without you. Thank you.